How about that? Thank you, Mamba. I was on mute. I did not turn on the microphone. Anyway, we could start that over. What's going on, Rotoscouts baseball fans? Yes, I was on mute, Larry. Failed to turn on the microphone. First time that's happened in a while. Scrambled. I've been sitting here for the last hour. I probably should have just started the show at 3:30. Just been kind of hanging out for the last little bit. And then, of course, didn't set anything up and just scrambled over the last minute to get the camera and the microphone in place. And, just managed to not press that power button. So, good to see everybody out there. I appreciate it. Yeah. See, that's where you guys are very kind and good people. I would have definitely let me sit there for another couple of minutes just talking to myself and not actually broadcasting anything. But anyway, Stephen B is here, Cujo's here, Andy Melman, Mamba, Larry Sear all here. Appreciate it. Anthony Taylor's popping in. Good day, Anthony Taylor. Good to see all you guys here. So like I was saying, to myself apparently, hopefully some of you guys out there won. No winner in my one lineup that I threw in on a night where I was just kind of hanging out, having some beers with my buddy Charlie and watching the hockey game. Really good hockey game last night. Hopefully the Rangers will get a W in their return to Madison Square Garden, make their series 3-2, send it back to Carolina, and close it out in the Eastern Conference. We've got a basketball game coming up later tonight that I'm definitely going to check out. And just a tiny little 4-game slate to talk about here. My YouTuber fully refreshed. Apologies for anybody who reloaded the page, scrambling, thinking that it was their fault. Larry had to find his remote. Always assume first that it's my fault that I didn't turn the microphone on. But anyway, little 4-gamer to talk about today. Nothing crazy. Let's pull up the board here. We've got a lot of the lineups in, which is handy. Tigers at the Red Sox, just a 7-run total in that one. Pretty low end in terms of offense. Jack Flaherty pitching for the Tigers, going up against Nick Pivetta. 3.43 implied total for the Tigers, 3.64 on the Red Sox side. Another low total in the next one. Zach Gallen going for the Diamondbacks, pretty high end, most expensive pitcher, highest projected pitcher on the board, if memory serves from when I put him together earlier. Christian Scott, making his 5th start of his career, has been pretty effective. He's given up runs in each game, but he's a decent strikeout pitcher, pretty efficient pitcher, doesn't walk too many hitters. So kind of an interesting spot. I've seen him projected a little bit lower than where we've got him. I think it depends on whether we get through 6. But he's made it through 6 innings at least in 3 of his 4 starts. Kind of like the spot there. 7-run total in the game. Vegas kind of likes it to stay low scoring too. 3.64 implied total for the Diamondbacks. Mets without Pete Alonso in the lineup now. 3.43 implied total for them. Pull up the weather real quick, actually. Weather seems fine. The reason I did it, just looking outside, it's not like a not nice day here, but it does have that feel of we might get a little bit of rain later on, and we had some rain last night, but looks like it's going to be clear. Roth saying a couple showers may be coming through at some point, but he's got it as green-yellow. Same thing with Boston. Seems fine there. Nationals at the Braves. Getting a little bit more interesting here. We've got Trevor Williams going for the Nats with the Braves showing a lot of power and a 4.96 implied total on their side. Looks like a pretty easy go-to spot for some offensive upside. On the other side of that one, Ray Kerr starting for the Braves going up against the Nationals. They're pulling just a 3.65 against him. Potentially some upside there, but he was good in 4 innings against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. Good in terms of strikeouts. He struck out 6, but he gave up 5 earned runs in that start. He was good for a stretch before that, pitching in bulk relief. So while there's upside there on the Braves side, it could be a little bit believable that the Nats could succeed against him. Yankees against the Angels, 8.5 run total there. The Yanks, the next highest run total on the board at 4.83. I think it was 1-2 Yankees, then Braves in the stack rankings. Might have been the other way around, but those were the top 2 teams. Kind of jibes with how Vegas is seeing it. Both of those teams at least a full run ahead of every other team on the board in terms of the implied total in Vegas. Yanks facing Patrick Sandoval, who's not completely terrible. And the Angels going up against Carlos Rodon, who looks pretty good here. 4.83 implied total for the Yanks and just a 3.78 for the Angels. And that's it. Very short slate. We're actually probably going to get through this one in, well, I don't want to say an hour, but we're going to make good time today for a change. For real this time. So looking at the pitching board, it was Zach Gallen all the way up at the top. 10-6, 9-5 across sites. 9-5 is actually a pretty fair price considering Zach Gallen's talent level, considering what the ceiling looks like in a diminished Mets lineup. Jack Flaherty seems to make a ton of sense at 10-3 on FanDuel, pulling a pretty decent projection there, and then just seems underpriced to me at 87 on the DraftKings slate. That's a really effective price against the Red Sox lineup that just lost Tyler O'Neill to the injured list. They've been diminished by injuries, overall for the season with no Tristan Casas, no Masataka Yoshida in that lineup. Now no O'Neill for the foreseeable future. There's a couple good bats in there. There's one incredibly good bat in there. But Flaherty's got a reasonably clear path at 8,700. That's a very cheap price for him. Carlos Rodon, great matchup going up against the Angels. Pretty low-end squad there. 8,200 for him is very, very cheap. 9,600 is perfectly fair on FanDuel. I think it makes a lot of sense to either try and get Carlos Rodon there, or maybe you dip down to like a Christian Scott for the value pricing. I do kind of like that option. I've played him each time he's pitched so far. Scott at just 79, 69 projects competitively with those other guys on the board, and I don't think it's off. He's got very good strikeout stuff. Really tight, efficient delivery. He's a good pitcher. The kid's going to be good. Assuming health and everything. Before they called him up, he was dominating the minor leagues in strikeout to walk rate. Leading the minor league leader over the first 8 starts of the season. Small sample, but he was a kid they expected to be good, was delivering, called him up, and again, he's made several very good starts. Nick Pivetta against Detroit. Definitely some upside there. Just went 3 1/3 in his most recent start. Gave up 5 earned runs in that one. Had a couple good starts through the start of May, though. Had missed most of April. The first start back, he gave up 5 earned runs over 4, but he went 5 2/3 against Tampa Bay, and he went 6 against St. Louis. We're going to talk about him in just a minute. But I think there's reason to believe in some upside for Nick Pivetta against Detroit. For the money at 88, 78, definitely worth playing. Sandoval could succeed against that Yankees team. It's just taking a really bad position on a short slate. I can't imagine he's going to be crazy popular, though. He does have the upside to throw 6-7 innings. He only went 3 2/3 in his most recent one that was against Cleveland. Got obliterated. Didn't have a great start, 2 starts back against Kansas City, but did complete 6 innings. He gave up 4 runs on 11 hits in that one, struck out just 3. Completed 6 innings in the start in between those two, and then 7 in the start prior to that Kansas City start. That was a really good one against Pittsburgh, but the Yankees are better than that list of teams. So it's a tough spot, but he's very, very cheap. There's enough upside there. If you're considering Christian Scott, I think you do consider Patrick Sandoval for a little bit less. Ray Kerr, we got to look at a little bit. 4 innings in his last one as a full starter. Every other appearance was a bulk relief appearance. We'll give him a look. He's only 55, 59. Trevor Williams looks like a target at 77, 65. He did have an okay start, but it was against Seattle. Struck out 8 over 5 innings, just 1 earned run, but it was against Seattle. Atlanta, notably not Seattle. He hasn't been bad. He hasn't given up more than 3 runs in a single start. He just doesn't pitch really deep into games. He's susceptible to some power. And the Braves just look good. So, tough spot there. I'd rather get different with some bats, I think. Quick and breezy through this stuff. Mama says, what a great slate. If you're going to lose, at least you'll know by the time the NBA starts. 3 at 7 p.m., then the Yanks at 9:38, just to be clear, not 9:30. Yeah, 9:38. Gotta love those silly start times. Bunch of people here hanging out. Hit the like button. We'll breeze on through this. He's on the Mets, so we'll probably get injured or some crap. Yeah, hasn't been great fortune for the Mets lately. Just see, what's his face, the reliever threw his glove into the crowd yesterday, and now they're gonna DFA him. who is it? Jorge Lopez, I want to say. So, first game up, Tigers against the Red Sox. So, like I said, Pivetta had a rough one in his most recent start on the 25th against the Brewers. He went just 3 1/3, gave up 5 earned runs, struck out just 3, walked 3. The 3 starts before that, since his return on May 8th, that day he faced the Braves, went just 4 innings, gave up 5 runs on 7 hits, gave up 3 home runs, which was problematic, struck out just 1, walked 1. But that was his return from a month-long injury. On the 14th, he faced the Rays, 5 2/3. He gave up 2 homers, but those were the only 2 earned runs, 4 total hits in 5 2/3, struck out 8, walked 0. It's actually a okay DFS start. And then went 6 against St. Louis at St. Louis, struck out 8, gave up yet another home run, just a solo shot over 6. That was the only hit he allowed. Does have the upside to have a very effective start against this Tigers team that, just looking at this version of the lineup, they're all right. But, I mean, it's not an intimidating squad on the other side. Certainly targetable with a decent enough pitcher. Top of the Tigers lineup, Matt Vierling, Riley Green, Mark Canha. All those guys are gettable for strikeouts. Pivetta in his 30 innings this season has a 27.7% strikeout rate against just a 4.2% walk rate. You can see the problems that he's had with the home run power in those incidental home runs in the 4 starts since he's been back. But Stuff Plus obviously loves the arsenal. 138 in a small sample right now. That's tremendously above average. 4.2 ERA against a 3.26 xFIP in the small sample, inducing a 12.3% swinging strike rate. Last season, in a much larger sample, 142 2/3, he was tremendous. 4.04 ERA and a 3.55 xFIP is fine. Did give up some power. This is not far off the mark from what it was here, but over a larger sample, it was less than a 4% home run rate rather than a 5.88. 13.1% swinging with a 31.2% strikeout rate, was walking a few more. Year before that, in a even larger sample, just a 22.6% strikeout rate with a 9.4% walk rate. So there was a step forward here for sure, but it was an improvement from an already decent pitcher. It made some sense. Maybe it's not going to return to this kind of a level, but I think this is reasonable. To expect around 27, 28% strikeouts. Maybe we get to 6-ish% walk rate. But I think he is a talented guy. For 7,800, 8,800, it's not that difficult to see 6 good innings here. If the home run issues crop up, obviously it's going to be a problem. You've got a couple guys capable of hitting for power in this lineup, but notably, nobody even at 10 home runs yet over some decent sample sizes in terms of guys who should probably have 10 home runs by now or could. So, while there are some power bats, Matt Vierling can turn on one. He's got a 45.2% hard hit rate, had a 42% last year. Just doesn't barrel a ton of balls. Gettable for strikeouts. Riley Green does have some power upside for sure. Good barrel rate, good hard hit rate. He's got 9 home runs to lead the team. Lefty bat going up against the righty. Definitely some power threat there. 6.37 is second on the team behind Torkelson at 8.41. He could arguably be lower considering the big dip in quality so far for him. The rest of these guys are fairly unthreatening. Colt Keith hasn't really gotten anything going. He's only hit 1 home run. The average is at 231 with a 292 on base, 288 slug. Really not delivering on the upside that we kind of thought was in this player. Not striking out a ton. Draws an average number of walks, but just not really making great contact so far at the major league level. It's been problematic. Sent him back down in the Dynasty League. I think I mentioned that. Gio Urshela is not by any means an intimidating hitter. He's a 269, 306, 312 over 98 plate appearances, .043 ISO. Is not a guy paid to hit the baseball. Had an okay season back here. I think that was one of those Yankees years where everybody thought he was like an incredible player. He's not a cleanup hitter. That's a weird spot. Should probably be Spencer Torkelson, even with the struggles. Torkelson probably belongs in that spot. Or let Mark Canha hit cleanup. Mark Canha's got a little bit of power. 43.3% hard hit rate this year. 5.18 in the home run model. He's got 6 homers and 211 plate appearances. 157 ISO. It's about right. Canha's good at hitting the ball. He's good at driving the ball. He's good at getting on base. 360 on base percentage. Mark Canha's a good player who could/should be on a better team than this. Maybe to end the year he will. 4,600, 2,700 on DraftKings. 46 feels a little steep, to be honest. 27 is fine. It's cheap on FanDuel, and it's not a high price on DraftKings, but kind of in this lineup against a good pitcher, it does feel like it's a little high. I'd rather have him in the low 4s or the high 3s, but he's one of the better options in this lineup. You do get Akil Baddoo back. I think that's the first time we've talked about him on a main slate all season. He's made 4 plate appearances so far. It looks like he scored a run and drove one in. He's got a 667 ISO, so he's hit the ball hard a couple times, 66.7% hard hit rate in a tiny 4-plate appearance sample. We know Baddoo's got a little bit of power, a little bit of speed upside. So it's an interesting bat at least to add back into the lineup. 11 homers, 14 stolen bases, and 357 last year. Just 225 plate appearances the year before. Just 2 home runs, 9 steals. That was a down year. I think he had one more cup of coffee kind of a season before that. But we don't need to unpack it. He's got a little bit of power, a little bit of speed for 32-23. He would be probably a priority bat. If I'm stacking Tigers, I think I want these 3 lefties, Green, Keith, and Baddoo, and then one of Torkelson or Kana, and probably one of Urshela or Veerling, just for how it comes together. My preference would be probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, actually, like that. First outfield, second. Yeah, that works. You fill all 3 outfield spots with Tigers if you do it that way, which I don't necessarily love. Just takes away some flexibility with stacking some other teams on a short slate. Maybe you don't fill it out to a full 5-man. Bottom of the lineup, again, Torkelson is really, really struggling. Just lost his premium contact bounce from last year. Back to the struggling hitter and even worse kind of than we saw 2 years ago. 209, 276, 343, a 78 WRC plus, only 4 home runs this season. He's down to just 4,200, 2,600. This is a guy who had a 14.1% barrel, 50.5% hard hits last year that turned into 31 home runs, a 213 ISO. He was a very good right-handed power bat last year, but it's just been gone so far this season. Speaking of gone, Javi Baez at the bottom of the lineup, 199, 228, 273, just not trying. Just take the money, retire. Like, if you don't want to try, if you're going to do this, just retire. I guess he's just bad. It just seemed like a lot of low effort, so it's probably a combination of the two. I really can't stand Javi Baez at this point. I guess it's me. Carson Kelly, bottom of the lineup, 27-22. Has 2 home runs and 100 plate appearances. Just a .090 ISO. Not really much of a hitter in his major league career. 206, 278, 287 last year with 2 homers. Year before, 7 homers in 354. Maybe you get the odd day where he hits a home run for cheap, but bottom of the lineup, it's not really an ideal target. Jack Flaherty looks like a pretty interesting pitcher. 10-3 is a big price to pay for a pitcher in Fenway going up against even a diminished version of the Red Sox here, but it is starting to get pretty thin for this Red Sox lineup. Outside of Rafi Devers, now we've got Rob Refsnyder hitting third. Jaron Duran's good. Willie Abreu's been good. 2 lefties off the top. Connor Wong's been good, but that's limited in the credulity that start has. Garrett Cooper, Reese McGuire, Vaughn Grissom, David Hamilton. That is a weak bottom 4. So it definitely looks like a targetable Red Sox team. And $8,700 for Jack Flaherty is a pretty tremendous price. Guy's got a 33.3% strikeout rate over 10 starts, 61 innings this year. 3.7% walks, a 3.84 ERA, but a 2.04 xFIP underneath it. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal, but it's really, really working for him. Not only does he have the tremendous strikeout rate, 14.9% swinging with a 34.6% CSW. These are tremendous strikeout numbers, or the strike throwing numbers. Hasn't gotten dinged for too many barrels, limiting hard hits to 33.3%, exit velo to 88.1 miles an hour. He gave up 2 home runs in his last game. He's given up a home run in a decent stretch of games. There's only been 2 games all season, actually, where he hasn't given up a home run. In that same mix, though, he had 1 bad game where he gave up 6 earned runs back on April 7th. Had a 4 earned run game in the middle against Tampa Bay on the 24th. Other than those, he hasn't given up more than 3. There have been earned runs scored in most of his starts. That's where we get to a 3.84 ERA. But as we can see, a lot of that not necessarily his fault. That's why the xFIP is so low at 2.04. So this is a very good pitcher who arguably has given up a couple runs that maybe shouldn't have been scored. Some of the home runs that have gotten out of the yard, definitely not, characteristic here. So I think there's upside even beyond what we've seen from Jack Flaherty, which is a lot. that's saying a lot. Granted, this is a major, major leap in terms of strikeouts year over year. 2 years ago, in just 8 starts, 36 innings, 19.8% strikeout rate. He was pretty bad in that sample. Just a 10.4 swinging, though, is noteworthy. 25.5 on the CSW. Then last year in a 144 and a third inning sample, just a 22.8% strikeout rate, 10.7% swinging. So this is a big leap forward for Jack Flaherty. But he's made it work so far. I kind of like the spot for him to continue. This is a big price to pay, but he's been worth it throughout most of his starts, and it's a very, very short slate. At the same time, I do think maybe the 3 lefties plus your favorite righty from the Red Sox lineup here could be a reasonable enough stack. Again, he has given up 3 or 4 runs or 3 runs in a handful of starts, 4 runs in one, 6 runs in another with home runs. So there's a little bit of upside creeping through. Rafi Devers is just impossible to keep off the board. 5,800, 3,900. The prices have come back up finally. Sites finally figured out that he was never bad at any point during this season. 10 home runs, 284, 378, 538 with a 254 ISO, creating runs 50% better than average. Crushing the ball when he makes contact with it. Just doing Rafi Devers things. The lineup around him is more limited than it should be. This should be a better Red Sox team than it is lineup-wise. It's kind of a shame, with their full allotment of players, with all the injured regulars, with the pitching staff that they've managed to string together. It would be an interesting Red Sox team in a lot of other versions of this season. Duran off the top is one of the lefties I would focus on. Solid hard hit rate from him. Willie Abreu, solid hard hit rate and barrel rate so far this season, and maintained it last year. Both of those guys were similar last year in terms of how they hit the ball. 26.3% or 26.4% strikeout rate for Abreu, 23.3 for Duran, 20% for Rob Refsnyder, 23.5 for Rafi Devers. There are strikeouts available at the top of the Red Sox lineup, and then through the bottom with some of those weak hitters, there are definitely some more strikeouts there. So it's, again, just kind of feeds the opportunity for Jack Flaherty with the idea that there are a lot of strikeouts in here, and he should really not have much issue getting through these hitters. So I could see Flaherty going through this lineup 3 times clean with a bunch of strikeouts. Abreu's at 284, 356, 510. He's got 6 home runs, 7 stolen bases, a solid 226 ISO, 139 WRC+. Top of the lineup has been creating runs. No argument about that. Refsnyder, 342, 429, 532, 2 home runs, a stolen base, 92 plate appearances so far. Regular plate appearances for Rob Refsnyder is part of the what I was saying before, kind of the shame of the Red Sox season. Not shame on them for giving Rob Refsnyder plate appearances, but it's a shame that they have to give Rob Refsnyder regular plate appearances at this point. He's primarily there as like a platoon man reserve kind of a player against left-handed pitching, but I think we're going to see a fair amount of him if O'Neal's out for any extended stretch. They're just running thin there. He's not a 3-hitter. He's a journeyman utility type guy. Those numbers are not real, 342, 429, 532. But he's cheap. He's holding down that spot in the lineup right now. I do think he's playable. He's been decent over the last couple of seasons. Not a standout in any way, but he's capable of getting involved in a DFS format for cheap. Connor Wong at 36 is a bargain bin catcher. That's a really good price for a catcher who, again, current year short sample in 152 plate appearances, 329, 368, 471. I don't believe that he's going to maintain that kind of a triple slash all season. But he has always been a catcher, or at least over the last year plus, going back into 2022. He's had an interesting contact profile. He's been a guy we've said, maybe you can target a cheap home run from Connor Wong. 5 in 152 plate appearances is a nice step forward for the actual home run production. You can see even the home run model doesn't go over the moon for him at 3.80. But he's a playable enough catcher bat. 143 ISO will 134 WRC plus based on the tremendous on base and some of the power output. It's a great price for a guy who's been very productive. 2,700 on FanDuel on a team without a clear-cut first base option. You can easily go first base with him, third base, 2 of the outfielders, and there's your stack. Garrett Cooper at 31, 24. 1 home run on the season in 99 plate appearances. Pretty low-end option. Another guy who's more of a platoon option. But getting a chance here, righty-righty. No Dom Smith in the lineup. He's the lefty first base option because this organization hates poor Bobby Dahlbeck. Got to working Bobby Dahlbeck anytime I can. McGuire, Grissom, David Hamilton at the bottom of the lineup. Grissom sub Mendoza by a decent margin over 80 plate appearances. Really hasn't done anything to drive the ball. 94% worse than average creating runs. If you add him to Reese McGuire, that equals one average player. 94 WRC plus so far from McGuire over 94 plate appearances. 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases. 2 home runs, 8 stolen bases from David Hamilton. He's actually been the most interesting out of those bottom lineup hitters for this team. No Sedan Rafaela down there today. Hamilton's been a little bit frisky. 3,000 at both middle infield spots on DraftKings, 2,500 at both middle infield spots on FanDuel. I think he's playable if you're stacking up Red Sox. It's just not a good spot really to stack Red Sox. But if you wanted to take Hamilton, wrap him back around to the 3 lefties at the top, that's not any crazier than taking Rob Refsnyder. It's just Refsnyder's got a much better spot in the lineup overall. He'll see an additional plate appearance. But it's not completely nuts. And that's that one top to bottom. Did I say we're going to get through this show fast? It was like 20-ish minutes on game 1. Still, only 3 games to go. Larry's saying, I think Grissom's finally starting to get healthy. He got the flu or something after his IL slot. Lost like 15 pounds. I didn't know that. Dahlbeck needs a tennis racket to get his K percentage down to 33%. Do I have a strategy for short slates, or do I just go with the highest projected players? I mean, typically, I'm still looking to get at least one good full stack in there, but I do think there's more room on short slates to maybe dance around a little bit with some one-offs in the other slots. Not necessarily saying like 4-man stack and 4 one-offs, but I'd be more open to some more distribution. Where on a big slate, I think it's more important to target 2 larger stacks because it's more likely that 2 teams will fully go off. Larry going back to the Mets bad luck. Yeah, you're right. It's more or less like 25 years. It is amazing that that whole group basically washed out. And then that next one that came through kind of, Wheeler isn't pitching for them and wasn't Zach Wheeler for them. DeGrom, mostly hurt, not pitching for them anymore. Like that whole next generation of that, it happened to as well. But they'll figure it out at some point. They've got billions of dollars now. I don't really love for 4 games. I think that's maybe a bit much, the batter against pitcher. Question there, Larry. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to allow it to come through that way. But with 4 games, I think there's enough options where you don't necessarily want to do it. I think it diminishes your opportunity and diminishes your pitcher a little bit if that happens to connect. Where the shorthanded nature of the slate in terms of those pitching options, if you diminish the one that you did get to, even on a good day, I think that's more critical to your lineup than whatever points you would get out of that hitter. I think there are more options to make up those hitter points. So I don't tend to do it. I usually reserve that for like a 2-game slate, maybe sometimes 3 games, depending on what it looks like. Maybe if you were doing it like game by game, maybe you could get away with saying like I'll do it against the higher end pitchers. Like I'll allow it against Flaherty and Gallen and Rodon, but not against these guys. If that makes sense, because each of those points is going to be more critical for those guys, where these guys, I think, have a little bit more high ceiling upside, where they can make back those points with a couple of extra strikeouts. They're more likely to pitch 6-7 innings. But at the same time, if you're thinking about it that way, each of those points is critical against these prices for these guys. So I tend to think that it does diminish taking a pitcher more than it helps. Or taking a hitter against a pitcher more than it helps. Hopefully, at least some of that made sense. Stephen Leibowitz saying, Judge, I'll take the lefty versus righty matchup. Not that Soto is ever a bad answer. Oh, as far as do we prefer Soto or Judge? Spoiler, it's going to be both. Technically, Judgy outpacing him a little bit in terms of home run upside. He's a little bit more expensive on FanDuel, a little bit less expensive on DraftKings. They're both tremendous. Whichever one fits in terms of price on whichever site you're playing. No real preference between the two, honestly. They're both tremendous options who do a lot of very similar things. Soto strikes out a little bit less. Judge hits the ball a little bit harder, but they do a lot of the same things from a lefty-righty perspective. You could, was it Larry, I think? Whoever said lefty-righty, you could just take that, but there's really no diminishment for Juan Soto against Patrick Sandoval. Diamondbacks here. Zach Gallen, again, 9,500 on DraftKings feels like a pretty decent price against a Mets lineup that now has Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, JD Martinez, and, what else? There's not a lot going on for the Mets right now. Gallen's been good throughout most of the season. He had one bumpy start with 5 runs allowed. Otherwise, he hasn't given up more than 3. He's pitched deep into games. Last 4, he's gone at least 6. He completed the 7th in his most recent start. Gave up 8 hits in that one. Gave up 7 hits in the start before that, over 6 2/3 against Detroit. Most recent one was against Miami. 3 earned runs allowed in each. The Miami game, he gave up a homer. He struck out 5. Detroit game, he struck out 10, walked 0 in that one. Just 1 walk in the 2 starts combined. It is, 4 straight quality starts for him. Just 2 of them were wins against Baltimore and at Cincinnati. The 2 games you would expect that they would have won against Detroit and against Miami at home. They actually lost. Or he didn't. Yeah, no, they actually lost. Looks like he just got no run support there. But a premium pitcher, pitching pretty much like we expect. 3.12 ERA, 3.28 xFIP, 6.5% walk rate with a 25.9% strikeout rate. It's kind of right on the money for where he was last year. Even with the high hard hits, the exit velo being where they are on a moderate launch angle. It's not a pitcher that keeps the ball down extremely. Like, that's an okay line driving, not complete home run trajectory type of average launch angle. So he's effective enough, but there are a lot of hard hits here. There is a lot of exit velo here. Just manages it well. 2.60% home run rate last year, 2.59 so far this year. You can see Stuff Plus doesn't absolutely love the arsenal. Little bit below average. Joker likes it. He's here. But Gallen makes it all work. 210 innings and 34 starts last year. He was tremendous. 3.47 ERA with 3.49 xFIP right on the nose. Same thing this year. The expected number is right in line with the actual. So nothing really not to like about Gallen with a lot of upside, other than the fact that he's probably going to be popular and he's a little bit expensive. I do think there are other options on the slate, including the opponent. 6,900 on DraftKings, 7,900 on FanDuel for Christian Scott is kind of interesting. 22 2/3, just a 22.8% strikeout rate, but for a rookie just coming out, this is not bad. He's gotten major league hitters to swing and miss. He's gotten strikeouts against major league hitters. 12.1% swinging strike rate is better. That's ahead of the pace that has resulted in a 22.8% strikeout rate. So there's presumably more to come. Stuff Plus right about league average for the full arsenal in the small sample. I expect that'll climb a little bit. He does have pretty good stuff. He's also a tremendous command pitcher. Like I said, was leading the minor leagues in strikeout to walk rate when he got called up. And right now, decent strikeout to walk. 4 strikeouts, 1 walk in his last appearance. Gave up a homer in each of his 3 most recent starts. 2 earned runs in the last one over 6 innings to the Giants, but only 2 hits. 1 homer, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. 3 strikeouts over 4 against Miami. Gave up 4 earned runs on 7 hits. That was a bumpy one. Gave up a home run in that game. Struck out 8 Braves in his second start. 6 innings. Gave up 3 earned runs. Gave up a homer, 2 walks. So he gave some of the points back, but the 8 strikeouts were noteworthy. The first start was really nice. 6 strikeout game. Gave up just 1 earned run on 5 hits over 6 2/3 against the Rays. So we've gotten the depth out of him to make him easily playable on the FanDuel slate at 7,900. The fact that he's gone at least 6 innings in 3 of his 4 starts, and he pitched in the 7th in his first start of the year. They're going to manage his innings going forward a little bit. They don't want to give him crazy, crazy innings and blow his arm out. But I think right now, 6 is easy to envision. Into the 7th wouldn't shock me if he's going all right. So I think this is a bargain price for a pitcher with a bit of a ceiling. If he goes out and has his strikeout stuff today, even against a low strikeout, pretty decent Diamondbacks lineup, I think they're gettable enough for him. A couple of the key bats do strike out at a fair clip. We know that Corbin Carroll's just struggling to do anything well this season. 65 WRC plus, a .097 ISO, 2 homers, 9 steals. Sub Mendoza after 232 plate appearances, not hitting the ball at all hard. 20.3% strikeouts is not bad. It's not that far off the mark. He does still draw some walks, but he's really scuffling at the top of the lineup. Ketel Marte has been very good. He's got 10 home runs, also 10 home runs for Christian Walker. But a 20% strikeout rate is not the 16.8% that he was at last year. We'll see where it ends up landing, but right now striking out a little bit more. Also hitting the ball a lot harder. Maybe selling out a little bit more for power so far this year. But there are a little bit more strikeouts there. There's a little bit of strikeout in Jock Peterson, 20.9% last year. He's good at drawing walks, no doubt. But this pitcher doesn't give up too many. If he's effective around the zone and if he's getting some swing and miss, it'll help keep him off the bases in terms of the walks. There are strikeouts there. There are more strikeouts this year in Christian Walker at 23.3%. So I think it's maybe a little bit high at the top, maybe a little bit of an opportunity there for him. That said, that is a dangerous group of 4 hitters. If Corbin Carroll gives you anything off the top, the other 3 have been basically on form. 226 ISO with 6 home runs for Peterson over 150 and can absolutely brutalize a weak righty. If Kristen Scott comes out as an intimidated kid without his best stuff tonight, Jock Peterson's a good candidate to hit a home run. 8.17 in the home run model, 8.32 for Walker, 8.25 for even a struggling Carroll. Marte a little bit behind the curve at 6.59. There's a couple power shots in there that the model doesn't know about yet, so that'll probably go up in the future when we do another update. But right now, a respectable enough mark. Lourdes Gurriel really scuffling over the last few weeks after a good start. 6 home runs, 3 stolen bases, down to 279 on base, 237 average, 135 ISO. Really, really not putting things together. Still fairly low strikeout at 18.3. Puts the ball in play, just a 5% walk rate. Same thing from Pavin Smith, 11.1% strikeouts this year. That's down from 19.7 last year in 228 plate appearances. Just 45 so far this year. So the more believable number is last year's number. But still, this is decent in terms of low strikeout and high walk. Right now, it's low strikeout, low walk. He hit 7 home runs, but had a 188 average last year with a 317 on base. He's a kid who's they do like as a bat control kind of a hitter with a little bit of, maybe sneaky emergent power from the left side. He just really hasn't put much together at the major league level. 3,100, 2,200. He's cheap. He's playable enough against a kid who was just pitching in the minor leagues the other day. Junior Suarez, Gabriel Moreno, and Kevin Newman off the bottom of this lineup. Really 3 pretty unappealing hitters at this point. On a small slate, you can absolutely take shares of any of them. Suarez is the best option. 3,500, 2,800. He's really been bumping along. 214, 279, 313, 0.099 ISO. Kind of part of the problem right now for the Diamondbacks. But it has been a tremendous power hitter over time. We're just maybe nearing the end of that curve. 71 WRC plus so far, just 3 home runs and a 6% barrel rate, 32.1% hard hits. You can see that's basically half the barrel rate that he had the last 2 seasons. Moreno really hasn't delivered much as a hitter. 151 pretty empty plate appearances so far this year. Playable enough part at catcher if you're building a bunch of lineups, but kind of an afterthought right now. And then Newman is not a primary offensive hitter in this lineup. 2,926. Plays 3 positions on FanDuel, just shortstop on DraftKings. Low-end shortstop option. 2 home runs, a stolen base in 128 plate appearances this year. Last year had 3 home runs and 8 stolen bases in 253. He's okay. It's a 250 average kind of a guy. Low-end on base. Can contribute from time to time. Not in 150 Diamondback stacks. You play him a few times for sure. But he's not a priority. If you take him Mets against Zach Gallen, you're dealing with Francisco Lindor off the top at 4,500, 3,100. He's tremendously discounted. 8 home runs, 6 stolen bases, a 161 ISO, and 91 WRC+. plus. Hasn't been good outside of a couple of days of counting stats. Still hitting the ball very, very hard. 44% hard hit rate, just 43.4 last year. 8.8% barrels is down from 10.4 last year, but it's up from 2022. The hard hits, the barrels are not far off the mark. I've talked about this before. The strikeout rate is actually down from last year a little bit. Walks are down a little bit too. I continue to think we're not that far away with Francisco Lindor. He had the weird plate appearance the other day where he just kind of like lowered his hands and just watched a strike 3 and didn't even make an effort to pretend like he was going to swing. It's been a weird season for him, and I can't imagine he's encouraged by what's gone on with this team lately. So maybe he doesn't actually just turn it back on. Maybe he has a Javi Baez kind of a season and just continues to be bad and not care. But I choose to believe the upside from a player who is tremendous when he's going right. So you're just getting a discount there. It's just not a great spot to be rostering Mets going up against the slate's top pitcher. DJ Stewart, 3,300, 2,600, 4 home runs on the season, a 172 ISO. Playable in stacks. Brandon Nimmo is a good lefty bat, 4,600, 3,000. As the 3-hitter on this team now, I just kind of prefer Brandon Nimmo when he's able to be the leadoff man. Utilizes strong on-base skills, 355 on base so far this year. Just a 214 average, 380 slug, 166 ISO. Just not a great spot for him in the lineup, but makes plenty of good lefty contact. Cheap enough. Definitely would be a priority in stacks of Mets. 4,000, 2,900 is cheap for JD Martinez's power. He's hit 3 home runs in 114 plate appearances so far this year, 113 WRC+. Making very, very good contact. He would be a priority. The top 4 is your clear priorities there. You could debate DJ Stewart or Starling Marte. Marte's been all right. 6 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 131 ISO with a 107 WRC+. Decent average. The on base, I'd trade 10 points of on base for 10 points of average there. Maybe a few more walks. But he's putting the ball in play. He's driving the ball again. 45.6% hard hits, 8.2% barrels. So the power comeback is nice to see. He's always capable of stealing bases if he gets on. He's a contributor for DFS. Jeff McNeil, you guys know I don't really like, especially when we're not getting BABIP out of him. He's just kind of useless. 229, 302, 328. No real power to speak of. He has hit 3 home runs and stolen 3 bases, but a .099 ISO, 1.8% barrels, and 29% hard hits is right on the money for who he is. There's not a lot to like there unless 3 hits fall in, on that random day for him. Mark Vientos, I do think there's believable power upside. 44 plate appearances. We've gotten 3 home runs so far this year. Pretty good output in a small sample. Crushed the ball so far in a small sample of batted ball events. 16.1% barrels, 51.6% hard hits. That's who he is. He's a guy, 10.7% barrels, 51% hard hits last year in 233 plate appearances. He's a guy who is known for hitting the ball very hard. Just didn't really result in a full level of output at the major league level last year. 211, 253, 367 in 233 plate appearances. Did find 9 home runs with the premium contact. He's a kid that they do expect to be a power hitter. So for 31 on both sites, at the corners on FanDuel, at third base only on DraftKings, if you're stacking Mets, I'd rather have Vientos certainly than Jeff McNeil, Brett Beatty, or Omar Narvaez. I think he's a better bat than all 3 of those options. Marte, just given the spot in the lineup, if you flip those 2 guys on the lineup, I'd probably rather have Vientos and just bolt them on up here. Marte's a better multi-category contributor. He's better with the bat right now. There's a lot of power in Mark Vientos' bat. Brett Beatty, I was talking about him to start the year. I thought the hard hits from last year were interesting. I thought he ended up a little bit lower than he might have gotten to also last year. 389 plate appearances, just 9 home runs, a 110 ISO, a 68 WRC+. Wasn't great in the triple slash, but I thought maybe there were interesting things about the hitters. So far this year, it really hasn't come true. 5.5% barrels, 32.1% hard hits. No real output to speak of. Does have 4 home runs, but just a 100 ISO. It's been pretty disappointing. And then Narvaez, just a lefty backup catcher with maybe a little bit of the memory of having some pop in his bat. 4 home runs in 296 2 years ago. Yeah, we're got to go back further in time, I think. 11 homers in 445 in 2021. Can I tell you that? No, probably not. There it is. 22 homers back in 2019. So we got to go a ways back for Omar Narvaez at this point. Any given slate, if you're stacking a bunch of Mets, sure, but not a priority by any means. Zach Gallen's a big yes. Christian Scott is a yes, definitely at price. He's my favorite discount pitcher on this slate. That said, Diamondbacks could easily get to him. Diamondbacks are the preferred out of these 2 stacks. I think the Mets are playable. They'll probably be pretty contrarian against Zach Gallen on a slate like this. So maybe you grab 2 or 3 Mets, string them together with some of the higher end options on the slate. They're not unplayable from the top. Guys like Vientos are interesting. Marte, if he's low owned, could be kind of a frisky play in this spot. 4-game slate. That is the other thing about a 4-gamer. You can get those days where 4 low scoring games, a guy who double scores a run and steals a base is all of a sudden kind of valuable for a fair price in the outfield. And a guy like Marte is certainly capable of having that day. So it is a day. That's what I mean when I'm more willing to consider some, oddball type one-offs. It is a day, for that kind of an option. 2 games to go. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Check out our pals over at acemind.io. Read the banner that's going right there for all the details on that. Promo code rotoscouts gets you 20% off your first month over at acemind.io. They've got sim tools, they've got optimizers, PGA, MMA, NBA, MLB, WNBA, so on and so on and so on. So check those guys out. It helps us out quite a bit. What is going on here? Oh, shit. A verdict is in. Well, that's interesting. The verdict about this game is that you should probably play the Atlanta Braves. The Braves look pretty tremendous. 3 hitters above the magic number in the home run model. I made Matt Olson the home run pick of the day. I'm sure he's going to be popular, but I like Matt Olson and I like him to get on track going forward. Ozuna at 10.76 seems kind of obvious from the home run model. Austin Riley at 12.0, despite his struggles so far this season. Love the upside for these 3 power bats. I think you can get some sneaky power out of Ozzy Albies. It's 8.71. He's a little bit off track for power so far this season, too. Just a 122 ISO, 3 home runs, just 3 stolen bases, and 200 plate appearances. This is not the Ozzy Albies that we know and love. Still creating runs, 12% better than average. Still has been a good contributor at second base. Michael Harris, as I've mentioned a couple times this week already, I really like him in the leadoff spot in place of Ronald Acuna now. 5 home runs, 8 stolen bases from the lefty. He's got 2020 or better upside for sure, especially if he's leading off going forward. A lot of hard hits, a lot of ability to drive the ball, reasonable strikeout rate with a low walk rate, so he's putting the ball in play a ton, 4,400, 3,200 for that skill set, multi-category contributions for DFS purposes, makes him look pretty tremendous, and it helps lower the cost of rostering these guys. So top 5 for the Braves is pretty killer. Orlando Arcia, 3,600, 3,000. I like the player. 5 home runs this season. Just 240, 261, 388 is not ideal. 79 WRC+, but he's very cheap for his upside, for his talent level. He's underperforming so far this year. Was pretty good last year. So I think there's upside there. And still hitting the ball relatively hard. The barrels are just down a little bit. Strikeouts are low. Walks are lower than they were last year. Very, very low right now. So again, just a cheap enough shortstop that puts the ball in play in this lineup, even the diminished version of the Braves, put the ball in play with a lot of hard hit behind it with a ton of frequency. I'll take that option for low prices at shortstop. Sean Murphy, Adam Duvall, Jared Kelenic from the bottom. Sean Murphy, a tremendous bat at catcher, has missed most of the season, just 10 plate appearances, hasn't done anything yet, but we'll remind that he hit 21 home runs with a 129 WRC plus and a 227 ISO just last year. 18 home runs and 612 plate appearances with similar numbers the year before that. So a lot of quality from Sean Murphy. Duvall at 3,700, 2,900 is cheap for the right-handed power upside in the outfield. A lot of barrels out of Adam Duvall. A lot of cheapo home runs, but he's a low-end hitter in terms of a lot of strikeouts. Low output for average. On base is only okay. He's less than a 3 true outcomes kind of a hitter because he doesn't really get on base for you. He's just kind of a right-handed swing and miss or hit a home run kind of a power bat. So he's like a two outcomes kind of hitter. Kelenic is largely disappointed for his major league career, but there is still quality there. He does hit the ball hard. Inarguably, he hits the ball very hard when he makes contact. Just a ton of strikeouts. We haven't seen the sustained, ability to stay on track. We've seen spurts to that level, but we haven't seen him able to hit that level and then stay on like a nice plateau of quality. It's just been up and down output, but any given slate upside from Jared Kelenic for sure. Burying the lead, they're going up against Trevor Williams, who has a 2.29 ERA with a 3.73 xFIP. He's actually not been completely bad. Just an 81.66 if we're letting stuff plus be a tiebreaker, or if we just want to go back in time, we can see that last year he had a 5.55 ERA with a 5.22 xFIP over 144 and a third innings. He gave up a ton of power. He gave up a ton of home runs. That's where all this is coming from. Had a 16.8% strikeout rate versus 21.4 so far this year. That was on fairly similar. He's had a little bit of an uptick in swinging strikes, a little bit of an uptick in CSW for sure. But this is still a small sample compared to this. Year before in 89 and 2/3, he was only okay. Still gave up some contact, some home runs. So I think we're just seeing a little bit of an illusion here so far with Trevor Williams. I think that the Braves are a pretty good, pretty obvious spot. I'm sure they're going to be popular again. They're one of the 2 high teams today. 4.95 implied total. They're the highest on the board. The Yankees not far behind at 4.83. So they're the two kind of clear-cut options today. We've definitely seen this Braves team fall on their face a little bit more this year, though. Again, Riley is underperforming at 233, 303, 365. Only 3 home runs out of him. Olsen has only hit 8 home runs. He's at 237, 324, 434. So there's been a little bit of a dip. Albies, like I said, has not been completely himself. Obviously, we're without Acuna now. So as a value dart, I think basically everybody's kind of in play. If you're just talking about like these low-end value dart, just give me somebody who's at a expensive hitter price and let me try and win it with bats. I don't think Trevor Williams is necessarily off the board. Last time out against Seattle, 8 strikeouts, like I mentioned at the top of the show, gave up a home run, went 5 innings, just 1 earned run. You just don't get a ton of depth. He's more a 5-inning starter. He's only gone 6 once so far this year, pitched into the 6 2 other times. But most of his starts are 5 innings, a run here or there, 2-3 strikeouts. He spiked 8 strikeouts twice, had a 7 strikeout game. Every other start is 4 or fewer. Doesn't really have issues with walks so far. I just think this is more likely to revert to what we've seen in the past from this pitcher. And I think he's more of a target. Wouldn't stun me, though, if he paid off 65. 77 on FanDuel, considering you're most likely not getting the quality start out of it. It's not ideal. It is still very cheap for sure. But I think I'd rather just have Christian Scott for 79. Right? 200 more. I think I'd rather take that upside. 10 points of median with a little bit of strikeout ceiling. The ability to probably close 6 innings if things are going well. On the other side for Atlanta, Ray Kerr. Second start of the season. He went 4 innings in his most recent one, gave up 5 earned runs. Struck out 6 Pirates, though, at Pittsburgh. Walked 1, 7 hits. 3 1/3 in bulk relief against San Diego. He gave up 2 earned runs, 2 home runs. Those are the only 2 home runs he's given up in the limited number of innings so far this year, 13 1/3 innings. Struck out 4 in that one, walked none. He's only walked 1 hitter in the 13 and change innings. 27.6% strikeout rate, 1.7% walks. 5.40 ERA, but a 2.87 xFIP in the tiny sample. Fantastic swinging strike rate. The 32.7% CSW is tremendous. He has given up a little bit of barrel, a little bit of premium contact. But again, it amounts to only 2 home runs in, 5 appearances? 2 of them lasting 4 innings or less. 1 of them just 4 innings. So I think we're dealing with a pitcher who's probably not giving you, maybe he gets 5 if everything's clean and he pitches efficiently. 5 innings, 5 strikeouts is kind of probably the ceiling here. 19.9% strikeout rate for this group of hitters, 19.7% last year for the Nats. Let's see if we got this lineup in. We did. So it's just another spot with Kerr where it's like, all right, I get what we're doing here price-wise. For $5,900, cheaper than some hitters on the DraftKings slate. Only slightly more expensive than Marcell Ozuna. Only slightly more expensive than CJ Abrams. I kind of get it. $5,500, same thing on FanDuel. I don't think you're getting the quality start on FanDuel. But at 55, it matters less than it does at 77 on the other side of this game. So give me 5 innings with 5 strikeouts for the 5,500. I think that is more workable here. The Nationals, as we looked at the other day, were really good against lefties last year and kind of have that reputation still, but have not really been so far this year. So there's a little bit of upside maybe from that for Ray Kerr. But again, this is not the highest strikeout group in the world. CJ Abrams has been very, very good lefty-lefty so far this year. Small sample, but in 226 overall plate appearances, he's been good, and that has translated to success against same-handed pitching. So for 56.33, I do think he's the top priority off the leadoff spot in that Nationals lineup if you're going there. Lane Thomas is probably number 2, arguably number 1 in that lineup, considering his quality that we saw last year against lefties and all the quality that we got out of him last year. But over 110 plate appearances this year hasn't really been good. It does have 13 stolen bases, but just a 73 WRC plus. Hasn't really gotten on effectively. Missed a lot of time, though. 41.32 is an effective price for him. Like, short of those 2 guys, the rest of this is pretty non-threatening, even for a guy like Ray Kerr. So I'm not that worried, even with some low strikeout options in there. It's just a matter of whether he can find those. Is it 3 strikeouts or is it 5 strikeouts? Is it no runs? Is it 2 runs? That's critical when you're talking about probably just 5 innings. So I think you're still walking a tightrope, but I think he's priced appropriately to be able to throw that dart, walk that tightrope, however you want to put it. Continuing on with the national stack, because they are probably playable against this pitcher and then whatever comes out of the bullpen. Joey Meneses for 34.28. He hasn't really been good at all. 2 home runs, 2 steals, a 75 WRC plus, no ISO. Really not hitting the ball all that well. A low barrel rate, decent hard hit rates, but really doesn't get any output for a little bit of quality contact. He's fairly low strikeout. He draws a walk here and there, but the output for Joey Meneses over the last season plus hasn't been great. The average was all right last year, but the on-base wasn't great. The slug, the ISO were pretty disappointing over 657 plate appearances, where he hit 13 home runs. In these 240 plate appearances, he also hit 13 home runs. He was pretty tremendous in 2022 in that short stretch. Looked like they had a hitter on their hands, but really kind of failed to deliver last year. It's a little deceptive with the 275 average. That kind of masks pretty much a lack of quality across the rest of that. Jesse Winker, not ideal, but capable of driving the ball. 6 home runs, 9 stolen bases, a 118 WRC plus. Still gets on base effectively. Definitely knows how to draw a walk. Kerr so far, again, has not really walked anybody in the small sample. Keibert Ruiz at 2,500, a catcher who puts the ball in play all the time, but doesn't really see any good results from it. That's what you're getting from him. Hasn't really shown the ability to drive the ball all that effectively. You're just talking about a lot of balls in play. But again, from a catcher who hits in the middle of the lineup for only 2,500 where you have to play the position, that's got a little bit of inherent value. Any given slate, that could turn into 3 hits, and on a small slate, 3 hits could definitely win you a slate from the catcher position, just as a one-off, even if you don't stack this team. So it's not going to be 3 high-end hits, most likely. He does have 3 home runs. Last year, he hit 18 home runs in 562 plate appearances. Was pretty decent here. Right? I had forgotten he had totaled that high in homers. Was that him? Yeah, 18. I'd forgotten that the total got that high last year. You can see it came on a 149 ISO without a lot of premium contact, but that's a decent home run total too. So a playable enough catcher, again, for 2,500 on this small slate. I think that does kind of make sense as a consideration as a one-off on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's a lot less appealing. It's just kind of sticking a low-end bat into a spot where you can play a first baseman. So it doesn't really work the same way on FanDuel. I think he's playable in stacks on FanDuel if you go to the Nats, but less so as a one-off. Nick Senzel, 37-27. 5 home runs. We saw a little bit of power output. He is still above average for run creation, but we really haven't been in shape all that much in terms of the triple slash. He is drawing a few walks, keeping the on-base percentage afloat. Not really hitting the ball all that hard. Illuminado Vargas, Eddie Rosario, and Jacob Young. Rosario's got 7 home runs, 8 stolen bases, but we're sub Mendoza. Pretty bad on-base percentage, 70 WRC plus. Vargas has a 298, 383 front end of his triple slash. Hasn't really done much beyond that, but has been helping create runs a little bit by getting on base, being involved. So maybe a playable part at 3,100, 2,400 with 4 positions on FanDuel. Keeps him involved. Correlated scoring play in stacks only, really, though. Not a lot of upside. Eddie Rosario has more individual upside just based on the counting stats for DFS. And then 16 stolen bases out of Jacob Young at the bottom of the lineup. If he gets on, he's going. There's definitely some speed upside there. So maybe a little bit of appeal as like a wraparound play in stacks. But another guy, probably you don't want him as a one-off. Not really a ton of individual appeal from the bottom of the lineup. So both pitchers are kind of just bargain bin options to I need a handful of points for 5,500 and I'm going to try and win it with bats kind of a play. Neither one is overly appealing. Trevor Williams is more of a target than Ray Kerr is. The Braves bats are one of the top 2 teams on the board with the Yankees. Looks like a tremendous option today. They're going to be popular for sure. But with all the options to one-off things across a 4-game slate, you can definitely string it together in a unique enough manner that it won't matter. Really like the upside for the Braves. And then, again, the Nats playable. Abrams, Thomas, the top 2 priorities. And then, maybe some of the 1 through 6 of it. Maybe some Keibert Ruiz as a weird little one-off catcher for 2,500 on DraftKings. So moving on, last game up, the Yankees and the Angels. As somebody mentioned at the top of the show, we go 7:10, 7:10, 7:20 starts, and then we wait until 9:38 for this one to go. No lineups in yet for this one. Yanks will presumably be something like this. Probably get Trevino again against the lefty. DJ LeMahieu probably going to be in the lineup, over 8 plate appearances so far in his return. He's gotten on base a few times. Hasn't really hit the ball all that much yet. 75% hard hit, but that's over those 8 plate appearances. He's got a 167 average. So we're talking about what? 1 hit, probably 2 well-struck balls in there. Anthony Rizzo was in the lineup yesterday. Remember, we were talking about it being a weird projected lineup that Labs had put out just because there was a fairly weak lefty on the mound. The Yankees don't really platoon Anthony Rizzo that way. Maybe with LeMahieu back, we'll see a little bit more of that, but I expect Rizzo again tonight. 4,500, 2,900. He's got 7 home runs on the season, a 98 WRC+. We're still not back to the old version of Anthony Rizzo. Maybe he never comes back, but there is still lurking left-handed power in a tremendous power lineup. 2,900, 4,500, you're paying a very fair price for the upside of Anthony Rizzo against a very gettable lefty who, 5.60 ERA. He's been giving up runs. He has a 3.89 xFIP underneath that, but he walks too many. So he kind of feeds into what Rizzo does pretty well. Last year he had just a 1.84% home run, 1.25 the year before. He does keep the ball down somewhat effectively. This year, 2.43 is up a little bit, but decent at limiting hard hits, premium contact. That's why the Yankees' numbers for home run upside are kind of cut in half. But Rizzo can absolutely avoid striking out. He can draw walks a little bit better than he did so far this year. He's good at getting on base when he's going right. So it puts him on the board. LeMahieu would be on the board just kind of as a cheap part. I just don't love the first third base positioning on both sides. I'd rather have DJ LeMahieu in the middle infield where he used to play. Volpe, 4,600, 3,400 from the top of the Yankees lineup. Tremendous option given the position in the lineup ahead of Soto, Judge, and Stanton. 357 on base. That's all he needs to do, like I keep on saying. But he also provides counting stats. 6 home runs, 11 steals, a 132 WRC+ so far. Been doing really well. Top of the lineup, 46-34 is still pretty cheap, too, for the talent upside, for the counting stat upside. These two guys, again, are tremendous. They project out basically the same. They do a lot of the same things. 15 home runs, 17 home runs. 412 on base, 407 on base, 182 WRC+, 185 WRC+. Like we said at the top, you can absolutely play Juan Soto here against this lefty, no problem. You can play him against any lefty in baseball. It does not matter for Soto. But some lefties are better than others. You can definitely play Soto. You can definitely play Judge. You can let the price decide between the two if you have to. You can let the handedness decide between the two if you have to. There's no mistake taking one or the other. The home run model slightly prefers Judge with the projection, with the premium contact upside, but it's very slight between these two numbers. It's very slight between those two numbers, these two numbers. So tons and tons upside out of either one. Giancarlo Stanton, 4,800, 3,400 is underpriced. 200 plate appearances, an 18.5% barrel, a 50.8% hard hit, in line / up from what he's done over the past couple of seasons. 13 home runs in his 200 plate appearances, a 251 ISO. Looks tremendous right now. Get him while he's still in the lineup, while he's still healthy. Knock on wood, it lasts all year. It's unlikely to. We haven't seen a full season of Stanton in quite some time. But if we get a full season, give me 600 plate appearances, I'll take the upside for 40-plus home runs. Alex Verdugo at 42-32. An effective bat, good bat control option. Definitely no worries about him against Patrick Sandoval. Might not be looking at a tremendous home run upside, but a few hits, some involvement, some correlated scoring. He's definitely on the board for that. He's correctly priced for that in this lineup. So is Glaber. Even with Glaber's struggles, 39, 3,000 at second base, just booking a spot in this lineup, in the heart of this lineup, there's value in that for those prices. And Glaber's got a ton of upside beyond what we've seen so far this year. It's just has he reverted to previous form? Has he taken a step backward after we thought he took a pretty significant step forward last year? It's been problematic. Trevino is okay. He's got a 275, 324, 422 slash line, a 116 WRC+. He's actually hit 5 home runs this year. Weird little power output over 111 plate appearances. Last year he hit 4 in 168. Year before he had 11 in 353. He's not a tremendous hitter, but he's an any given slate option. I greatly prefer Wells when he's in there, but we're probably going to get the righty against the lefty starter. Sandoval, from the same way that the other guys from the bottom of the board are just cheap dart throws and perfectly capable on a short slate of giving you a handful of points and helping you win in conjunction with one of these guys, Sandoval's not off the board. The Yankees have enough strikeout in that lineup. A couple of the key power bats definitely strike out quite a bit. He's not a bad strikeout option. And again, he's good at keeping the ball in the yard. So I think he's in play. 7,100. He projects out just fine for that money on FanDuel. I think you could get a quality start. He's what? 6 innings in 3 of his last 4 starts. One of them went 7. Struck out 7 in that game. That was against Pittsburgh. Just 3 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts, and 4 strikeouts with some runs allowed. Had a meltdown against Cleveland like we talked about at the top 3 2/3. 8 earned runs, 3 home runs, 4 strikeouts, 4 walks. That was a disaster of a start. Could definitely be in line for another one of those against this Yankees team. That's why they're the second highest projected team, or the second highest implied total on the board, either the highest or the second highest ranked stack, but a little bit more limited than usual for power upside. You could see the path to success for Sandoval. Wouldn't totally stun me if we saw 5 or 6 clean innings and a handful of strikeouts. So he's in that value bargain bin, dart throw kind of a level. Rodon is a much better option off the top of the board here. 22.2% strikeout rate, 2.95 ERA, but a 4.53 xFIP. Kind of some mixed numbers here. Stuff Plus loves what the arsenal looks like, but the strikeouts are way down. Swinging strikes aren't bad at 11.53, but he's not throwing a lot of called strikes. 26.5% CSW is a little problematic. 7.4% walks isn't terrible, but he's given up a pretty high number of hard hits, barrels, exit velo. He's a fly ball trajectory pitcher. So there's some blips in here. It's just a very good matchup, and he's not really spiking a crazy high price. He's a little expensive on FanDuel, but he's got enough quality and enough upside, especially in this matchup, to pay that off. Guilty. Holy hell. Well, that's a little crazy. I was kind of hoping that I'd be off the show by the time that dropped, but looks like a lot of guilties. This is going to get really interesting, folks. Not to get political. That is welcome to a historic day, historic show. We're not going to get into it. We're not going to talk about right or wrong of it or who you should vote for. I think you guys know who I think you should vote for. But regardless of which side you come down, this is now a pretty historic day in American history. May 30th, 2024. When somebody asks you 25 years from now where you were today, you were here watching this goddamn show. Congratulations. This is where we all were today. Weird day. Anyway, let's round this show out. We'll talk a little Carlos Rodon. We'll talk a little Angels bats. And crazy. All right. So 8,200 for Carlos Rodon. That's a discount for sure. Even with the diminished version of Carlos Rodon against this Angels lineup that has plenty of strikeouts available for him, has a lot of young, hitters like we've talked about a bunch of times that are kind of post-hype guys. This seems like a prime destination, as I was jokingly saying the other day, for Victor Robles, who just got DFA'd by the Nationals. I would not be surprised at all to see him pop up on this team. I think the Rays are a better destination for his future, but makes a lot of sense for this team. But right now, with the team they've got, Nolan Chanuel, lefty off the top. He's kind of scuffling along at 228, 295, 333, and 80 WRC+. Plus. Has hit 5 home runs, no stolen bases, little bit of power upside. Allegedly has very good back control skills. You can see that in the low strikeout rates. Not a premium contact guy, but a guy who might eventually develop into a good hit tool kind of a player. Not Luis Ariz, but along those lines, right? Nicky Lopez, that kind of a guy. Stephen Leibowitz nails it. I was making DFS lineups. Bananas. Taylor Ward, 4,700, 3,000 in the third spot in the lineup. Their best hitter. 13.8% barrels, 44.4% hard hits, 11 home runs on the season, 232 plate appearances. That's tremendous. That's a really good stat line for 232 plate appearances, especially on a guy who's just kind of bogged down by a bad team around him. 127 WRC plus, 208 ISO, just doing really good things in the heart of that lineup. Kevin Pillar has been great. I mentioned him yesterday as like overperforming. I forget whether it's another home run or just a good day, but 6 home runs, 6 stolen bases, and 93 plate appearances. It's the best 93 plate appearances of Kevin Pillar's entire career. 349, 402, 639. I defy anybody to find a better 93 plate appearances. Maybe it's out there in his career. Maybe it's out there, but that's bananas, that output. That said, a playable enough guy at 4,500, 3,100, like he's not really crazy priced up for that. Maybe a little bit on FanDuel, but not egregiously so. So on a 4-game slate, he's easily playable, especially if you're stacking Angels. He's almost become a priority if that's where he's hitting in this lineup if you're stacking them. I like Logan O'Hoppy's power upside. He's hit 6 home runs in 180, a 7.45 in the home run model, 48.4% hard hit rate, 8.2% barrels. Last year he was at 15.6 and 46.7. Had that weird bookend year where he got hurt and missed most of the season, but was really good for power in the beginning and then a lot of well-struck balls at the end. I like the upside for him. I really do. 3,800, I think he's a very playable catcher. Joe Adell, 37.29. There's a lot of cheap pricing. I wouldn't be totally stunned to see the Angels get a little bit more popular than maybe they would normally warrant here, considering that they're a short slate, that Carlos Rodon, out of the pitchers who are talented and will be popular just based on who they are, probably the more gettable of those guys based on current form right now. So I can see them getting a little bit popular as being a path to like, give me 2 Angels, give me Taylor Ward, Logan O'Hoppe, and Joe Adell, and then a few Yankees and a few Braves from a lot of people, right? That kind of a build. Helps you do that while still getting like a Zach Gallen in there, I'm sure. I haven't built it, but I'm sure that would work. So I could see them getting a little popular, and I think it's justifiable. But my inclination is that Carlos Rodon finds some strikeouts and has a pretty good day here. In his most recent start, he went 6, struck out just 2, walked 3. That was against San Diego. But 3 hits, no earned runs. Struck out 6 in 2 straight starts before that, 7, then 6 before that, and 8 before that. So a lot of the low strikeout output actually comes from his first 4 or 5 starts and then his most recent one. He had a very strong stretch in there with at least 6 strikeouts, completing 6 innings multiple times through that stretch, facing some good teams, also some bad teams. But that was a good run of starts. So I do think the upside is there for Rodon. And again, at 8,200, just looks like a killer spot on the DraftKings slate. So greatly prefer Carlos Rodon between him and the Angels. But I do think that the Angels, especially on a short slate with some of those bats, are playable back the other way. To round things off at the bottom of their lineup, Zach Neto, Cole Tucker, Kyron Paris. Not really getting a ton out of the bottom 2 guys. Neto does have his 6 home runs and 6 stolen bases. 251, 301, 415, a 102 WRC plus. Another kid that they do expect to hit. They just, they rapidly promoted a couple of these kids to fill some holes. He was the first kid, if memory serves, last year, first kid up from his draft class, called up, really aggressively promoted, and was okay to start, but ended up just 225, 308, 377, 9 homers and 5 stolen bases and 329. So maybe a little bit of a step forward, a little bit more development. So as time continues, maybe Neto rounds into form and is a little bit more usable. He's the most interesting to me out of these 3 bottom hitters. These guys only 45 and 44 plate appearances, kind of unfair sample sizes there. Last year, just 10 and 46. Not a lot to talk about with either one of those players. Moderate amount of quality. I guess we can take a moment to Kyron Paris did have interesting output last year. This will probably be another one of the situations like that dude we were looking at yesterday where I was like, oh, wow, this guy's better than I thought. And then immediately I checked the chat and Larry C was like, yeah, he's not in the lineup there. Oops. What was that guy's name? From the Mariners, I think. He was interesting. I want to remember him going forward. So Kyron Paris, last year in Double-A, 514 plate appearances, did have 14 home runs, still 44 bases, 255, 393, 417. It's pretty good. Is there 22? Coming into this year, he was their number 3 overall prospect organizationally. Seems like a little bit more of a true baseball prospect rather than a excellent fantasy prospect. Like if I'm just looking at the traditional scouting grades, 60 grade run speed, 55 grade arm, 50 grade fielding, but just 45 hit tool, 45 power on the 2080. Still young. Another player that just kind of got promoted. He's only 22, so still a little bit young. But it seems more like a maybe gets on base and maybe can steal you a bag kind of a player, but not completely dead, not completely uninteresting from the bottom for 24 at second base on DraftKings, 23 at both middle infield spots on the FanDuel slate. And that'll round us out, guys. I think we talked about everything, right? I got a little distracted by some crazy news. So let's scroll back over. We'll take a quick look at the very short pitching board, and then we're going to punch out of here. We're going to get everything updated. Yeah, Ranger game. It's going to be wild. Big night in New York. A few blocks away from Larry's office, someone attacked someone with a machete at a McDonald's. Get ready for the protests and chaos now. I feel like the machete guy probably had his own things going on there, Larry. I don't know that necessarily the machete guy was making a political statement. I'm not familiar with the story. I didn't see it, but it is New York City. There's a lot of people just with their own motivations to attack people with machetes. Yeah, it's definitely gonna get rowdy. Probably on both sides with people yelling at one another from across barricades and everything. Fortunately, it's New York City. So the other thing that New York has going for it is the NYPD just does not mess around. So they'll be fine. I don't worry about New York City. The NYPD is essentially a small army. So Zach Gallen at the top of the board, 10-6, 9,500. Seems really well priced on DraftKings. Everybody's cheap on DraftKings. 95 for Gallen, 87 for Flaherty, 82 for Rodon, and then declining from there. Seems like a very mix and match kind of a slate in terms of pitching on DK, where you can get basically whatever you want. There's enough cheap hitting on the board where you can mix those in with some of the high-end Yankees, high-end Braves, etc., and just kind of combine things together and not really have problems. So seems like a killer spot to get Gallen against the diminished Mets. Jack Flaherty against the Red Sox, very believable high-end pitcher, a lot of strikeouts so far this year, outperforming his previous seasons, but has always been a talented guy. Was just diminished by injuries over the last few years to some degree. So big step forward for Flaherty this year. Diminished Red Sox lineup. Again, they lost Tyler O'Neill now on top of the previous losses that they've had, Tristan Casas, Yoshida, but still some playable parts in the Red Sox lineup. Rodon, love the opportunity for him. A little bit cheaper on FanDuel at 96. Makes him a little bit more playable over there. Probably spikes his popularity a little bit. Maybe it takes some headshots with the Angels on the other side of that one. But I like Carlos Rodon to have a nice upside game here. 8,200, perfectly cheap price on DraftKings. Christian Scott, talented young pitcher going up against a Diamondbacks lineup that's got some strikeouts, not a ton, but maybe a few players striking out a little bit more. So there's a little smidge of upside there for him. 7,900 is a fair price on that FanDuel slate where he aligns with the other guys. 6,900 on DraftKings is a bargain. Looks like my favorite SP2 on DraftKings. The other SP2 guys are more dart throws. Any one of these guys from the bargain bin just saying that I'm paying a very, very cheap price for a few innings and I'll take what I get. Those guys are that kind of option where I think Christian Scott is a truly talented pitcher who is in a playable spot where he can compete maybe on a good day with these. You need Gallen maybe and Flaherty to underperform. But I think given the median, he's got somewhat similar upside. It is probably a lower overall ceiling, but there's a significant salary gap there making that up. Pivetta can easily succeed against Detroit at these prices. 8,800 on FanDuel is a bargain. 7,800 on DraftKings. You can absolutely consider him equal to Carlos Rodon here. Not far off of Jack Flaherty's talent level. So on the right day, Pivetta absolutely can win this slate against Detroit. That is a very, very good price for Nick Pivetta on both sides, really. 8,800 is totally fair. Sandoval, right day, no issues with the pricing there. He's also probably slightly above that bargain bin. It's just the Yankees as an opponent is not ideal to take him out of and put him above that bargain bin. So I'm going to leave him in that same bucket with Ray Kerr and Trevor Williams. Both sides of the Atlanta-Washington game, moderately playable. You got to really have some faith in the idea that you're just, again, paying a hitter price for a 5-inning performance. And you take what you get. Stephen Leibowitz mentioning Flaherty has reverse splits this season. Is that right? Didn't know that. Let's see. Ba, 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 ba. And let's see. Versus. I'm usually looking at this board for hitters. I just got to find where they. So righties are hitting 261 with a 352 BABIP against him. He's got a 198 xFIP against righties, a 207 xFIP against lefties. Very, very close there. Lefties are hitting 233 with a 329 BABIP against him. So a little bit more good fortune there for some of those righty hitters. We're talking about facing 121 righties and 122 lefties, so it's dead on in terms of the sample size. He's given up 5 home runs to righties and 4 home runs to lefties. He's given up exactly 13 earned runs to each side, but he's given up 15 overall runs to righties. He's given up 2 triples to both sides. He's given up 4 doubles to lefties and 2 to righties. And again, 5 home runs to righties and 4 home runs to lefties. He's walked 5 lefties and 4 righties. He's hit 1 lefty with a pitch. He's hit 2 righties with a pitch. Obviously doesn't like righties as much. He struck out 42 lefties and 39 righties. I'm going to say we're basically pitching down the line, Larry. Or Steve. Excuse me, Larry. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more reversed from what expectation might be, but that's pretty much on the line of, looking at WOBA, a 324 WOBA to righties, a 295 WOBA to lefties. It's actual WOBA, not X. Just trying to find different indicators. 298 on base versus a 270 on base, 443 slug versus a 405 slug. So righties are getting him for a little bit more power. But there's just some happenstance in those small samples, really. Figure it stays consistent or it normalizes back the other way, probably. But a tremendous option. And pitching better than we've probably ever seen him, but he always has been pretty good. Looking at the home run board here. Round things off, and then we'll get some things updated. We'll unmute the TV so I can see what the hell everybody's gabbing about with all these crazy history. So 3 Braves at the overall top of the board, 4 in the top 5 spots once we account for Ozzie Albies there. Lane Thomas sneaking into the top 5 at 9.23 on the Washington side of that game. Kind of interesting there. Definitely a good player who might be a little underappreciated given the current season output so far, over 100 and change plate appearances. Not a bad option there, but you can obviously see the quality in the Braves and not too far behind some of these Yankees. They're a little bit diminished by, again, Patrick Sandoval's ability to keep the ball in the yard over time and induce soft contact over time. But you're not keeping Judgy that far off the magic number. Same with Soto. Same with Giancarlo Stanton down here. Yankees, very playable, second highest run total on the board and one of the highest stack ratings on the board. Rafi Devers pulling a decent total there in the Boston game. On the other side of that one, Spencer Torkelson, who has been bad, but again, it might be another cheap spot where just, if you can capitalize on one of those on a small slate with a player who I know for sure does have plenty of home run upside, any given slate upside is kind of what you're looking for in some of these 4-gamers. So Torkelson's not off the board considering where he grades out. Michael Harris, I love in that leadoff role, gives the Braves yet another option with a pretty good power rating. Some of the Diamondbacks, 3 of those guys pulling 8+. Corbin Carroll still. Jock Peterson, Christian Walker, a little bit more believable for this season's output. Ketel Marte not far behind down here at 6.59. Not a tremendous day for power, though, among the teams involved. Just 3 guys above the actual magic number for power. I made this guy at the top of the board the home run pick of the day just because he was easy and obvious and 4-gamer. I didn't feel like overthinking it. That said, you guys, you absolutely rock out there. Whichever side of the news you come on, try not to freak out too much. Everything will hopefully be okay. Good luck in this tiny tournament tonight. Somebody out there go win something. We'll be back tomorrow. Shortest show of the year, I think. Hour and 24. 4 games. Nobody else is out there doing an hour and 24 solo show for about just 4 games. But that was a short one. It's probably why I can't shut up and end the show. Anyway, 5:25, I'm going to get stuff updated up on the website. Enjoy the hockey games, the baseball games, whatever you're watching tonight. Enjoy the news coverage, the protests, the riots, the fires, the craziness, whatever it's going to be out there. Good luck to you. We'll see you tomorrow. I almost said God bless. Would have been a really weird way to end the show. I'm sure Twitter will calmly react to everything. I literally can't wait to open Twitter. I think my phone will just explode if I try and open Twitter. I feel like that's probably what should happen. Maybe that's what Elon's doing behind the scenes for his buddy. Anyway, guys, we'll talk tomorrow. Hopefully the world will still be on and there will still be an internet come tomorrow. But good luck out there. Somebody go win something. Adios.